a deep dark night. But follow me outside into the moonlight.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Moonlight series, The Wild Rose Mood, featuring Aaron Nicely. And our host, John Baylor. We're back for another round. Take it away, John.
Welcome again. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Aaron Nicely, for joining us. It's been great to have him up here. We've had our first episode, and he's a bandmate of mine, and I just have not seen him for a long, long time. I don't think since the day I first met you, I don't think we've ever gone this long without seeing one another.
That is absolutely true.
So good to have you here, Aaron. And we'll get a couple of songs from Aaron, a little bit of conversation. You mentioned very briefly in our first talk a little bit of your education, your creative writing and literature education. I want you to fill us in with a couple of details of, it's going to take you a few minutes to list off all your degrees.
Yeah, I just had to hang them all on the wall again and painted my office.
Oh, my goodness. It must have taken 2 days.
Yeah, the house is shifted now. We saw the foundation had cracked from all that. But no, I had the great benefit of going to Wabash College over in Crawfordsville, Indiana, and getting some great education there. And then took a couple years off and went back for a master's in creative writing at Ball State. Another great experience, and I thought I wanted to be a literature professor, so I went and started focusing on the literature aspect of it, only, as I mentioned before, to actually have to teach a little bit and discover that grading 50 papers at a time was just not going to be for me. So
it is rough.
Yeah.
Wait, so how many English degrees do you have then?
That makes three English degrees, which is probably not a world record, but it's they do take up some
So
space.
masters in literature then as well.
Masters in literature, masters in creative writing. Yep.
And as a songwriter, what do you draw from your creative writing and your literature education?
A lot of thought about metaphor and attention to detail at the sentence level. A lot of work goes into writing novels, plays, whatever, and as you're training for that, you've got this time you wouldn't usually otherwise have in your life to just focus on writing. And so part of the expectation of that is you think about every word, every sentence, and give them the time and energy that they deserve, because somebody's going to be spending the time and energy to read it, potentially. So learned a lot about just the craft and the dedication that it takes through that, and then just reading broadly, which is part of what going to college is. As an English major, you get exposed to all kinds of different literature from around the world, and one thing it does is just helps you become a more empathetic person. You experience so much from different perspectives that you wouldn't otherwise get to experience in your daily life, right? You see the same 50 people on average. I think that's about what the number is. And so now you can meet anybody from around the world and just walk a mile in their shoes for a minute. And just that aspect of it, getting to know different people from different places through literature, was really important to me.
You mentioned attention to detail on the sense level, and I want you to just flesh out what does that mean.
Yeah. So you can, like, a first draft is sometimes good. Most of the time it's not. But for me, it's getting the thought down on paper, and then really spending the time on a song that, some songs I just know right away. I wrote this thought down. It was just a thought, not a song. But if I'm going to make it into a song that I want to bring to the world, then I spend more time on it, going over the lines, going over double meanings, different ways that they play together, and shape the lyrics of the song in that way, like you would in a novel. And so being trained to look at literature from a lot of different perspectives as part of the literature master's degree, where you dive into different types of theory. You learn to look at stories different ways from people who are putting it together, what it's about, what it's trying to say, what it's referencing. All those different things come together in different ways in each way of thinking about it. And so learning that there are so many different ways of thinking about it, and pulling those stories together and helping them mean different things to different people is also important too. As we were just talking on the break about the production assistant who sent the questions over, she took a look at the songs and sent some comments back that I had never thought of about my own songs. So it's good to know from a couple of perspectives that, one, you can do that work with patience and attention to detail, and two, that no matter how hard you try, somebody may get something else from it, and that's really one of the wonderful experiences of sharing music.
And when you say from a sense perspective, I mean, that sounds you're talking about engaging the senses, I'm guessing, right? Was that the idea behind that?
It could be. Yeah, a lot of times, just as a songwriting device, we'll try to think of how the story interacts with all the senses. So sometimes you can use that as a device, like a sonnet in poetry, right, as a framework to work inside. And so I have written some songs that try to play on all five senses, or touch a few of them in that way. But it's also
Like you've done that as an exercise, you mean, or just?
Yeah, as an exercise, or like
Okay.
I'll have an idea and it mentions the taste of something, and so in the next verse, then I'll try to think about, what would it feel like? What would it smell like? If the part of the song had already lent itself to a sensory detail,
Mm-hmm.
and so to continue working those in, and it helps to bring the song alive for different people, put them in that place and time, give them something to hold on to.
Okay, so if you're, as a listener of music, if you're going to be empathetic, because you were talking about empathy as a writer and from the literature background, so if you're going to be empathetic with the character of the song, then it makes a huge difference to taste the things that they taste and smell the things that they smell.
Yeah, in a song, you've only got a few minutes to get all that across, whereas in a novel, you can have an unlimited number of pages. And so you have to be really careful with what you pick and put in, and try and make it precise, or leave things vague. That way people can sort of imprint themselves on the song and interpret it the ways that they want to. So it just depends on the song and what you really want it to do.
I think in a way there's something about a sense detail, even though it's very specific and concrete, that is vague and interpretable, just because you're not coming out and saying what the person is supposed to feel. I mean, like emotionally, what the listener is supposed to feel when they hear it. You're giving them an image, and the image can touch on all kinds of things. So that even though a concrete detail is the opposite of vague, it sort of has that same effect.
I tend to think of songs and images, and sort of let them play out in my mind, and have them tell the story sort of visually to me as the song develops. And I think that comes out some in my writing. So it's writing sort of vignettes a lot of times, little short scenes, which is a little different than sort of the more clear step-by-step storytelling somebody like a Tom Petty would do in his songs. But that's just sort of the way my writing is developed.
Is that use of detail something that's natural to you, or is that something that takes a lot of work to get to that point?
It depends on how the song goes. Sometimes it comes fully formed, and you've got the place and time and the people and the thing, and you know all of what's happening. And sometimes it's just a line, a clever turn of phrase, and then you have to work really hard to bring it along from there. You may have one scrap of paper with a line on it that sits there for 6 years, and then you notice it one day, and it strikes you a different way, and you're like, oh boy, I can really feel this now, and see it and bring it to the next stage in the process.
Okay, well maybe we've set people up for what to listen for in an Aaron Nicely song. So how about you play one for us?
Well, if you wouldn't mind playing along with me, I'd appreciate it. Get to hear a little more of Mr. Baylor on the mandolin and singing some harmonies here. So do a love song for you. Send this out to my lovely wife Katie. She's, I think, watching at home tonight. I wrote this song for Valentine's Day. Well, I won't say how many years ago. But long story behind that we won't get into now. But it's called Evergreen. Hey, pretty darling, would you be my queen underneath the oak and the evergreen? You're the prettiest thing I've ever seen. When I opened up my eyes, well, this must be a dream. When the sun through the trees makes it all glow until the darkness settles over stars like snow. I got arms wide open, the purest heart. So I can restart. And you, oh yeah, you're all I need in my life. And no one else will ever change my mind. It's so easy loving you. And I know, Lord, I know I will always be true. Well, hey, pretty darling, will you run with me through the tall grass and the falling leaves, through the rain and the sun, the hot and the cold? Oh, will you hold me in your arms as we go? And you, oh yeah, you're all I need in my life. And no one else will ever change my mind. It's so easy loving you. And I know, Lord, I know that I will always be true. And you, oh yeah, you're all I need in my life. And no one else will ever change my mind. It's so easy loving you. And I know, Lord, I know that I will always be true.
Wow.
Thank you. That's Evergreen.
Thanks for playing that. It's been a long time.
Yes, I hope everybody listening to this gets a chance to listen to it with some headphones or through a nice stereo, because you guys sound so good together. Your voices,
Thank you.
everything sounds great.
Well, thank you. That's also the best way to showcase Ryan's work and what you're doing on the sound for us back there.
You make it easy. All I got to do is just put it out there.
So the visuals in that song stem from kind of the moment I knew I was really falling in love with my wife. I knew it was it when it was late, and we were running through the arboretum on the college, and just trees and trees and trees. And the leaves had started to drop, and so you could see the sky above and all the stars, and we were just having the time of our lives. They're just running around in the middle of the night through these trees, and that moment has really always stuck with me, and it was nice to be able to try and express that to her for a Valentine's Day song turned into that, and make it sort of a thing that talked about that everlasting love too. So both that moment you fall in love and where it goes from there.
That's a story you ought to be telling about that song.
Yeah, we always tell the other one. But
Are you going to tell the other one now? Or
I'm not.
No?
No.
Okay. All right. It's been shared with the public many times, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit about your education background in creative writing and in literature, and then you go off on the far other end of the spectrum for employment.
Yeah.
So, what have been some of your job experiences since getting all your English degrees?
So after we figured out that teaching wasn't going to be the thing, I got another assistantship on campus doing social media for the College of Sciences and Humanities at Ball State, which is a great college inside the bigger university there with 20-some departments. So I got my first experience. Like I had been on Facebook for a while. You got to remember this is 2010 to 2012 thereabouts. So it was still fairly new, definitely a new medium for businesses and universities to be using. And so I got in sort of on the ground floor of helping develop the content, tell the university's story as a way to engage alumni and keep them interested in what's going on at the college. The premise being the more engaged alumni are on the different media platforms, the more money they will give.
Now, that's still very rooted in literature and storytelling, but it's that technology is already creeping in.
Yeah, and so that was the job, was to tell the story of the students on campus going through those programs, of the different departments and what they were doing as a whole, and of the successes and trials of the different professors in those departments. So everything from touring the astronomy building and seeing the star show, and there's a better word for that, it's escaping me, but at the planetarium, but and professors publishing books, all the way to people chasing tornadoes, a group going out and doing that and trying to make those stories relatable, both visually through video and images, and also in the content we wrote for it.
And then I mentioned the technology because it seems like with your jobs after that, then you just keep going farther and farther down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, so that got me into sort of video editing, and that becomes more and more technical the deeper you get into it. And as part of that, and somewhere along the line, I don't even really remember where, I started making websites. You could do them for class projects and things like that. And so I took the social media to an automotive dealership group, and then from there started building websites and writing content and managing content for those. And from the building websites, I went to a construction company and made their websites from scratch, and then eventually started writing code for programming that did things. And so over the course of 5 or 6 years, really over a couple of years, taught myself how to code and wrote a program that ran the whole construction company after a couple of years there. And so I just got out of that the end of last year and started with a new automotive digital marketing company, which is cool because I get to help our dealerships tell their stories and us tell our story back to those dealerships of how we're helping them sell cars. But as part of my job also, I get to do our marketing. So marketing to those dealers about marketing to their customers. And it's a nice little loop there, but I get to do a lot of storytelling for things that are very technical and nerdy, and try and turn those into things that a technical person will write one particular way, but may not resonate for a car dealer or a car salesman, and sort of bridge that gap in telling a story and why those things are important, how they work.
So in general, there's still a lot of storytelling, but it's also very left brain heavy work that you're doing. And so I asked you about your creative writing experience, what impact that has on your songwriting, on your art. And now I don't share very much about my nerdy technical interests either, but we're both guys with creative writing master's degrees who do computer programming as well, which strikes me as an unusual thing, and it's true of both of us.
I think it's a really natural transition, because to me, as soon as I really got into coding, I could see the story in it. Right, you've got to some extent an end you're trying to get to, a goal. You start with nothing, and you've got to write all the parts and pieces that make it make sense and sort of pass the narrative along through the code to display something, in a lot of cases from a database to a user, and sort of make all those ones and zeros make sense to somebody looking at it. And to me, it felt perfectly natural to dive into that world. I didn't feel out of place at all.
I always felt like any time that I've got into coding, working on a project like that, the reason was that I felt like left brain atrophy. And so I felt like it was so different than the other things that I was doing, and I just had to work that part of my mind as well. But that's part of the reason why I'll go ahead and ask the question that I was kind of building toward. Is there a connection between that part of the brain, and maybe it's still all creative process for you as far as you understand it, but I'll still ask: is there a connection between that left brain technical side of your mind and your songwriting and your art?
Yeah, and I think I feel like the right brain side is a little flighty. It wants to have the ideas and paint the pictures and move on to the next thing, and the left brain side has got to be more detailed, pay attention. I guess that's the other part of creative writing, is just the constant editing and revision that you do as part of that process. And the same thing applies in code. You try something, it doesn't work. Well, you can either give up or you can try it 100 more times until it works. And eventually, you only have to try it 75 times until it works. And then you're a true professional. It's only 75 times. But yeah, that's sort of editing that you have to do, and the patience and the attention to detail really comes out on both sides to me. And in songwriting too, like if I write a line for a song and it sounds okay, I'll write the line 3 different times. If there's a word, I'll just stack the words on top of each other if I want to swap them out and try them different ways. So it may have a different cadence, a different feel, do something different to the song, and working that process, just knowing that the first try is probably not going to be right, and understanding that there's a long way to go before you get to the end of it.
For me, there's a great deal of pleasure in that process that you're describing, which sounds miserable, trying something 100 times and you still haven't come up with a solution. And whether it's in coding or whether it's in songwriting, either way, the fact that you're trying something and you're failing, and then you keep trying and then you get it, that's just a source of joy for me.
I think it's the baseball player in both of us too.
Yeah.
If you're batting 300, you're going into the Hall of Fame. So there's a whole lot of failing that happens in baseball, and I think it prepared me for the failing in many other aspects of my life, but including songwriting and creative writing and programming too.
Yeah, failing is just so much fun.
Yeah, why not? You get to try things a different way, and in a safe environment. It's not like jumping out of a plane, and maybe the parachute works or it doesn't. You've got a little more security in these attempts that you can iterate through and work the process. My wife hates it when I say that. We're just working the process here, right? Like, I just got to do this to make sure I'm happy about it.
I got to interject a little bit because your wife has been she's commenting a lot on the series tonight. And the last thing she said was singing the same line over and over and over.
We've spent the last 5 months, like just the two of us, because the kids have been out of the house. So it has been in each other's.
It's nice that she has time. It's nice she has time away from it, but she's still involved with what you're doing. So.
Yeah, when John said there's a 2-hour drive ahead of you and you get to see some, some other people, absolutely.
Yeah, go back and read the comments.
There's a similar element at play in live performance, and in the kind of music that we play with our band, there's a lot of improvisation in it. And I mean, you said like we never put on the same show twice,
right?
because every time we play that song, we're doing it in a different way than what we've done it before. And even in that, part of the appeal to it is the fact that you're trying something and maybe you'll fail, and when you fail, then you figure out a way how to make that work.
Yep. Yeah, Jimi Hendrix was famous for bending bad notes to the right note. The guys in the band call them Aaron notes instead of errant notes. Thanks for that. I do stumble onto quite a few of those, but yeah, it's that process of trying something new every time, trying to do it better and better and better every time you have a chance to. And with the way that we did, maybe 80 shows our most one year, but usually it's more like 30, 40. So it's special when you have a chance to try and do that. You want to make it better than it was the time before. Where recording, you want to do it, you got to do it once, you got to do it good, but a live performance, you get a chance to try different things. Work it out.
And to move back into the band territory, you've got, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I would say a lot more experience performing with a band than performing as a solo act.
Yeah.
And that's not true for anybody else that we've had on the program so far. What is it that's appealing about working with the band? And you can answer this. I'm interested specifically as a songwriter, but you can deal with it as a performer as well.
Yeah, it's always been kind of necessary for me as a subpar guitar player. Like, I just musically can't hold my own on stage, and I'm fine with that because that's not really what I'm up there to do. I really enjoy being on stage with my bandmates and working with them all the way through the songwriting process. I like to write songs in power chords, so then it sort of leaves the melody more options for you, whether if you made it a major or minor. And John will figure that out and tell me I'm playing it wrong after that, which I appreciate. But I just really enjoy working that process, bringing something to the band. It's kind of thrilling, and whether it makes it or not, or is the right song for that band at that time, it's just always a fun process. But yeah, I've never been particularly interested in being a solo artist, probably in part because I grew up listening to bands, not single folk musicians really. But that's just sort of always the vibe I wanted.
I think we better jump into another song, but I'm gonna make you play it solo.
All right.
What else do you have for us?
Well, this is one that did not make it for the Stampede String Band. I trotted it out. It was okay. It sounded great in Whiskey Machine as an outlaw country song, and so that band really crushed it. So that's just another thing. If the song's not right for now, save it. It'll be right later, or it might be. Just got to find that time. But I love playing this song. Wrote it sort of accidentally. I couldn't think of a song that I had heard that starts like sort of like that. And it wound up being Doug Somm and the Texas Tornadoes, Give Back the Key to My Heart. But I didn't know what the song was, and so I wrote this song instead. My temperamental mind starts wondering what it ought to do. My know-it-all heart just don't know what I want it to. I swear you're all I ever really wanted, and I ought to know better than to throw it away, than to throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. There's something in my soul just ain't believing. You see, the doubt's already been sown. I move on, honey, don't worry, I stay gone. The red X on the map reminds me I'm to keep away, I'm to keep away, I'm to keep away, I'm to keep away.
you're all I ever really wanted, then I ought to know better than to throw it away. Than to throw it away. Throw it away. Throw it away.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again, Aaron, for joining us and for sharing your music and your life with us. Really enjoyed not just having you on here, but just getting a chance to spend a little bit of time with you. So thanks for making the long drive up from Noblesville.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thanks, everybody. It's another episode of Wild Rose Moonlight series. Special guest Aaron Nicely. John Bailey's our host. These shows are made possible by some crucial people in the background at Gibson Foundation, Gibson Insurance, Marshall County Community Foundation, and Marshall County Tourism. Some other help behind the scenes is George Tricker, Katie Smith, Jennifer Reed, and Howard Gibbs. My name's Ryan Muir. Have a great night.